Brand Elite Sports Car Series. We are live here from the Glen. A little bit of an unusual broadcast here this evening. A type of series you might not normally see out there. But Seth Cole being joined here by Sam Dyer, and I'm going to be relying a lot on Sam because he knows a lot more about this than I do.
Yeah, we're going to be having the Daytona prototype vehicles that are going to be our DPE cars, and then we also have the GT Mustang vehicles on the GT side of things. These cars have such drastic speeds. You've got the prototypes that are running 108s, 109s, and then with the GT cars, you have them running about 1 minute and 22 seconds. So there's over a 10-second difference in the speeds in these vehicles, but that's what you get when you come with these sports cars.
I've never driven one of these things in my life, so at a road course like the Glen, what's the difference between these types of cars and the normal stock cars we see?
The prototypes are going to be sticking to the track just like butter. I mean, they're going to be just sticking on there, but if they hit a rumble strip at all, it's dangerous. They could be going sideways, they could be flipping. It's terrifying when you hit a rumble strip, so try to avoid those in the GT cars. But with the Mustangs, it's going to be a lot like stock cars, actually. They're pretty slow, and it's probably one of the tougher cars out of the two that you have to control. They do not like to turn, but you're going to have to figure out how to get through the bus stop, which is going to be the hardest part of this whole entire track.
This is running the configuration that the Cup cars run. They are not using the boot, which we kind of thought they would, but as you said, the bus stop there is going to be the toughest place. Now, obviously, as you said, there's two different classes, two different speed ranges. Where are you expecting to see for these two different classes the main passing zones?
Whenever you're with your own class, there's going to be certain places, like maybe trying to throw it into the bus stop. Those are risky moves. Also, turn 1 and turn 9 and 8. Those are great places to pass. But when it comes to passing both classes, when you got the prototypes passing the Mustangs, it's anywhere on the track. Anywhere that you see that there's a spot to pass, the prototypes are going to try to make a move. If that's on the straightaway or in a corner, they're going to try to make a move. But it gets scary once you get into the bus stop. There's not a lot of space. It's going to be very narrow, and these prototypes are going to have to slow down if there's a GT in front of them.
There, as we look back, there's the DP class, as they are going to be starting a little bit further back. Now, in my brain, it would make sense, so I'm going to ask you for confirmation. Let's say we go into a long green flag run here, which road courses are sometimes known really to do. I would assume that the GT class, we would see them on pit road sooner than we see the DP class because they'd be running faster speeds.
That sometimes happens. I mean, there's strategy involved in all of this. This is a timed event, so we're going to be racing for an hour and 30 minutes, and then once that time is up, you got one more lap, you'll hit the white flag, and whoever gets crosses the line first will win. But coming for pit stops, it's really up to the drivers and the different strategies. Some people are going to be short pitting, some people are going to be pitting much later, pushing the car as far as they can go. Honestly, pit stops, it's up to the driver, and I don't really think it's up to the class as the pace car runs off.
We go then, getting ready to go green, and the green flag is out. So this early on, how hard do you push it with everybody all bunched up, do you think?
They're this close. You got to make every pass you can get. I mean, this is the best opportunity to be passing people. Once you get strung out, it's going to be pretty hard to catch up to some of these guys. You're going to have Kyle Hayer up in the lead for the prototype DP class. And he's been the fastest car all during practice and qualifying. He's going to be the car to beat all race long. Chad Frankenfield is one of the cars we've seen in the Elite Series. He's very quick at road courses and also take Lytle in third for the prototypes.
That was Colin Bowden making a move there. I don't know if he was stepping out of line or making a pass on Tate Lytle for third position out of that GT class. As we've got 14 cars in the GT class, I believe, and I believe it's about 10 in the DP class.
Yes, that would be correct.
If you look up at your
classes mixed around, the DP class is the Daytona prototype 14 cars, the GT one.
I said that incorrectly. Well, that's my bad. In here at the battle right now that was the battle for the GT class, I believe it was, between Daniel Resch and Max Lupfer. Now you'll notice that the ticker up on the top is going to show you who's running what particular car. Unfortunately, we don't have where it's going to show the top car in DP and the top car in GT in position 1. So you're basically looking as far as the GT class for the 15th position. That is the highest running of that class.
And Colin Bauer is going to be making the move and moving up to 3rd place here in the DP class. But if we go back to the GTs, they're getting through the S's while the DPs are going into turn number 8 and coming to the straightaway pretty soon. So these cars, in the next 2 to 3 laps, we might be seeing some passes from the DPs onto the GT cars.
Seeing some good battling here. This is for the 3rd position out of the GT class. The 12 of Brian, I believe that's pronounced Zableski. He's trying to hold off the 77 and the 34, and I think you've also got Bill Dale in the 72 in this mix as well, so they're really in close proximity for 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th out of the GT class.
Looking like the 34 car is going to be making the move to try to pass number 12.
As you mentioned, this is timed, so up on the top left, it's counting down from the hour and a half. We don't really know in terms of how many laps these guys are turning and everything, so it'll be a little bit more difficult to project just how far these 2 respective classes can go in terms of laps on a tank of fuel.
Yeah, it's going to be the hardest thing to tell. We might be seeing some of these cars come in at anywhere from 40 minutes into the race or less than that. Don't know how many pit stops we're going to be seeing in this race, but around 30 to 40 minutes into this race, we might be seeing some pit stops.
This is a battle here for 7th. It's about the closest battle right now up in the DP class. You got the 91 of Tim Shinowski. You've got the 74 of Justin Johansson. Jared Campbell just behind there as well in the 31 car. This is about a 3-way battle for the 7th position. Rishabh Khosla also just behind this group. And there is the Bud Pug. Jared Campbell allowing this event to go on, and so therefore he gets a special privilege. He's got the Bud Pug up there above the Bofana in-car camera.
Just looking around, it looks like everyone's starting to spread out. And this is when we're going to see who's really
we got a car around. I believe that might have been Khosla. Someone spun out of the back of the... yeah, that was Khosla. He spun just out of the bus stop. It going, though. I will go back and see what happened to him. This obviously being a road course, there weren't really many other cars around him. I think Brent Jones was just behind him, and that was it. So they did not throw the caution. But solo car spin just exiting the chicane for the 54, so that's going to lose him a lot of spots in the DP class.
A lot of spots. It looks like he was getting close to the rumble strips, which, again, I was saying is very dangerous with these cars with how low they are to the ground. Any little bobble can make them go around very easily.
He was very fortunate there, too, to be on the brakes because there is a tire barrier. We got another car off course just off of the turn 1 runoff. That was a car out of the GT class. Hard to tell who it was, though. It might have been Lupfer, actually, because Lupfer was up in 2nd, and now he's all the way back near to dead last out of the GT class. No, actually... It wasn't him. It was a light blue car.
It was Lufer and Daniel Roche, I believe, which they were both 1 and 2 in the GT cars running through the bus stop. And now things are going to get chaotic. You got the prototypes and the GTs all mixing together right now going through the front stretch.
This is when it gets very interesting because, as you mentioned, the speed differential between the DP and the GT class, it's almost like working through lap traffic if you're one of those faster cars out of the DP class.
With all the chaos that was going on, it gave Colin Bowden a chance to come through the number 1 car. And he goes around right before...
Oh, my goodness. Oh! That's a hard hit into the steel guardrail. Now he's got to wait for everyone to get by him before he can refire the car. I don't know if they would necessarily throw a caution so he can get the thing turned around or not.
Looks like he's still trying to get around.
to find a spot where he'll be able to. Facing the wrong direction. And as you mentioned, I think he was up in second position at the time when he spun. And so we've had a lot of our front runners in both classes have some issues here in the first half hour.
Yeah, Colin goes down, and it was Frankenfield that was in second, but it goes through the S's, and now he's in third, getting passed by the 07. Looked like that incident with Bowden, my bad. And it looked like that incident might have slowed Frankenfield down just a little bit. But Kyle Hayter's still pulling away from these guys.
To look at it, this was, as mentioned, the battle for second, and just a little contact there between both Bowden and Frankenfield sends the one car around, and he has dropped all the way back to dead last out of the Daytona prototype class, obviously. He has finally gotten the car turned back around and has continued on, but lost a lot of positions and a lot of time, and with no caution coming out, that's going to be tough to be able to bounce back. As we mentioned, the first and second place cars of the GT class, with them getting involved with each other, that has now turned the lead in that class over to the 12 of Brian Zabletsky. And he's not too far ahead of Kenny. At the same time, he's trying to get out of the way of the Daytona prototype cars. It's hard to tell who that is right behind him, trying to get by him there.
Looks like that is Brent Jones that's getting by him now. And these are the last couple of prototypes, so now they've only got a few more. I believe the last prototype that they need to get by is going to be Ralph Just.
Amazing just how quickly the Daytona prototypes were able to catch that GT class
there's a car
cars.
around in front of Just.
Oh, yes.
Is
Is that Frankenfield? I think that is.
Frankenfield is completely, his whole entire right side is just ripped apart. I have no idea what happened. We have to go back and see what happened there with him.
Again in the bus stop, as we saw that wasn't in the bus stop. I'm sorry, that was out of the next to last corner.
Looked like he was trying to correct his car, corrected. This 06 got involved, and multiple cars were involved in this incident.
Oh, wow. Yeah, you're right.
Looks like the 91 got the worst of all of that, flipping his car over.
That contact that between Frankenfield and Johansson was right into that right front area. And we're going to show what happened here with he said it was the 91. Yeah, Tim Shanuski. Cheers, we're on board him, and there's just nowhere to go. Oh my goodness, wow, up and over. Amazingly, that didn't bring out a caution. I'm not necessarily sure, with this being a timed race, if they would throw full course yellows.
I believe the cars get going. It's more of a section caution. So, say like the end of the lap on the track, they'll throw a caution there, so everyone needs to slow down a little bit. But it is not going to be a full course caution.
As of right now, the guy that's not had any of that mayhem happening to him is the guy that's been out in front of it all, Kyle Hare, in the 95. Although he's not that far ahead from the driver they would try and battle him for the lead. He's only about 2.7 seconds ahead of the 07 of Kyle Strihars.
Action all over the place. Robert Kenny is going to be going up into the lead, making a move through the S's.
Should we make the disclaimer now, because this is it's got the name of Robert Kenny, but it actually isn't Robert Kenny driving the car.
Yeah, there was a little bit of mishap that happened with the name, and he gets a little loose coming out of the bus stop and puts his car into the wall.
Yeah, and coming off that bus stop, there is not a steel guardrail, there is not a safer barrier, it's a tire wall, and that kind of a wall just rips the car apart, no matter how light the contact may look. It was, you see right there, no rear grip going through the latter section of the chicane. Locked the brakes up, trying to keep it straight, but just all that momentum carries him into the tire wall. And that was, again, another driver that was leading their class.
Yeah, another one that goes around. But these GT cars are staying right on top of each other. The top three are just... I mean, there's a battle for second going on between, looks like, Drew Esselman and our pole sitter for the GTs, Daniel Resch.
You know, Resch has actually done a pretty good job bouncing back. Both he and Max Lupfer, actually. They were first and second. They had that incident where they both lost a lot of ground, but they've now jumped up to third and fourth of their respective class.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen multiple cars be spinning around as the leader, Kyle Hare. Oh! Well, I guess Rash is going to get his first place back with those two cars getting contact.
I guess so. My goodness. First and second there, spinning out. One goes into the gravel just in the middle of the bus stop. The other one had to go through the grass. And as you mentioned, the 14 who started on the pole for the GT class, now back to the... Actually, we're back where we started because Lupfer's right behind him in second for the GT class.
We'll see if these two are able to keep calm and keep driving through. I don't know who that was, but one of the GT cars just flew off of the track in that last corner.
I think that might have actually been Zablensky in the 12. Yeah, he was the one that it almost kind of looked like he came across Eisenman's nose, but I'm not certain. It's just sometimes so difficult at the road courses to be able to determine, you know, who ended up taking out who, because so many drivers have so many different approaches going into a corner.
That's the one thing with these sports cars, is that there's these two extremely different cars racing around, and when they get together, there's just chaos everywhere. But honestly, we're seeing a lot of the classes themselves be interacting with one another and spinning one another around.
An exchange there for fifth in the Daytona prototype class, as Joey Bailey just moved into the fifth position. You've also got Jake Johansson back there trying to now move into sixth. And yeah, I think to the point you made earlier, you said about the Daytona prototypes, they stick to the track. But you see a lot more daylight underneath these GT cars. My assumption is they wouldn't have quite the same amount of downforce that the Daytona prototypes would.
No, they would not. Looks like Max Lupfer's trying to put a bumper under and trying to go for first right now. Gets clear. Going into the final corner, come to the front stretch.
That looked easy. I'm not so certain that Daniel Resch didn't actually move over and let him take the spot.
It could have been it. I mean, Resch, you can look on his car. He's got a ton of damage on the backside of his vehicle. Might be messing with the aero a little bit.
It's like a good comeback here. We saw Robert Kenny actually, or Shane Theron in this case, lose the lead from the GT class, and he has now worked his way back up into the fourth position there, and he was looking like he was in the same sight as the race leader. See him here battling for third with Bronson Stafford.
I think that most of these guys are probably understanding, hey, this is a very long race. Let's cool it. We've been spinning each other out. Let's not completely wreck ourselves out of this race like some of these prototypes have been out, as Bronson Stafford goes off a little wide, which allows Shane to come around on the outside.
Other thing that I kind of would wonder about too, we've seen a lot of these drivers that have spun out and everything been able to continue on, but you got to think there's got to be a little bit of added tire wear when the car goes for a slide, which more than likely would call them to pit road sooner than they would plan.
Tire wear, damage, there's tons of different things. I mean, these pit stops might be going a lot longer than they were expecting to go just because of the damage that some of these cars have taken. Got to expect that these pit stops are going to be a lot longer, trying to fill up these vehicles with all the gas they can get so they can stay on track longer than everyone else.
Just up ahead here, this is a battle brewing for fourth place. Jared Campbell starting to get reeled in by Joey Bailey. This is about the closest battle currently for the Daytona prototypes. Bailey going to try and close in here down the straightaway, heading into the final few corners. And you can see here for Joey Bailey as well that he had started quite a ways back in the Daytona prototype class. So he's done a pretty good job of methodically working his way up through the field. Yes, he's gotten some help with a lot of guys up there at the front, spinning out, making contact, what have you. But you got to at least keep your car in one piece to be able to pick up those positions, and that's what he's been able to do so far.
Looking around to see where the closest action is, and it might be between Shane and Bronson Stafford, the two FRN cars. They're right on top of each other, coming to the second to last turn.
They're not alone. They got Bill Daly there as well in the 72, making that a three-man fight for what would be the third position of the GT class. And this is only going on about maybe 8-9 car lengths behind the brewing battle for the lead between Lupfer and Resch.
I think Bill Daly might be trying to make a move here going into turn one. Yes, he does. He dives down on the inside of Bronson Stafford. We'll see if he's able to hold it. Going into the corner, gets on the rumble strips. Luckily, does not run into Bronson. Bronson goes wide to give each other room. Bronson's going to keep that lap. Keep that position.
That runoff there off of turn one at Watkins Glen has been a huge game changer for drivers that are having a pass made on them on that inside line, where they've been able to use that runoff, get some extra momentum. And you saw right there how Stafford was able to hold off Daly for that fourth position with the aid of the runoff. This is the battle here that we were looking at beginning to close in just moments ago. Campbell and Bailey for fourth place. They're having to make their way around one of the GT cars, and now they'll resume the battle through the S's headed for the chicane.
Coming here, the chicane is going to be, yeah, he's going to go for the inside. Here comes Joey Bailey. Able to make that pass. Again, I think everyone's just playing it nice right now.
Yeah.
It's a very long race. I mean, we're only about, what, 10, 15 minutes in? Maybe 20 minutes in?
We're approaching 20 minutes into this. We still got about a minute and a half before we get to the 20-minute mark. But to your point, yeah, we saw a lot more take in the first 5 to 10 minutes. Now we're seeing a little bit more give as this battle will not go away. Lupfer, we saw make a pretty easy pass on Daniel Resch for the lead in the GT class, but Resch has not let him get away. They have not been separate more than maybe 3 car lengths, and I think that this battle is still going to keep going for these next couple of laps.
Yeah, for the GTs, you have the battle of these two up front for the lead, and then you still have the 3 cars that are battling up for third. Right now, we're side-by-side action for third.
Saw right there that Daytona prototype making his way around the 2 leaders of the GT class. I mean, just how do you, it's got to be so frustrating to figure out how do I pass these guys. You see right there, there's another of the Daytona prototypes that's trying to get through this battle for third place. I mean, where do you go?
Well, I mean, right there, the GTs were covering the whole entire track. There was nowhere to go except slow down. They were 3 wide at one point. I mean, there's really, you just got to be patient and wait for the GT cars to make some room for you to just fly by them.
A car that I noticed was running up towards the front in the Daytona prototype class is now currently scored 2 laps down. That's Tate Lytle in the 56. I'm pretty sure he was running around the 6th position just a couple of laps ago, so not certain what happened to him. I don't know if this is a regularly scheduled or stop or not. You see, he is on pit road.
It looks like it might be a stop. He's getting some tires changed right now. I could have been off with my times of knowing when cars are going to come in and get pits. I was just throwing out a random number for that one.
Your guess was better than mine because I didn't even have a guess.
But there are some cars that are in heavy damage that are just now running around the track trying to get as much time out there. And that's Brent Jones and Chad Frankenfield, both cars heavily damaged and are just now just limping around the track just to see what happens to everyone else.
We've got a couple of cars that are out of the race. Colin Bowden, we saw, have that issue over in the S's early on. The 91 is also out, and he was the one that clobbered Frankenfield coming into the final few corners. And also, I also noticed as well that we have a huge gap for the race lead now. It was, I think when we last checked, 2.7 seconds, but Hayer has been able to open the gap up now to almost 7 seconds over Kyle Stryhars. So not much of a battle right now going on for the Daytona prototype class, but definitely the battle still going on in the GT class.
Yeah, I mean, the prototypes right now are just clocking in laps. A lot of these prototype cars have pretty damaged. I mean, a lot of these cars were dealing with issues already with the Frankenfield accident that took out about 3 cars. And then the 06 spun around at some point. A lot of these cars were just dealing with a lot of damage, maybe some aero problems. And Kyle Hayer has been the one car that's just been up front and looking pretty, not really dealing with any problems, catching all the GT cars at the right time, able to pass everyone cleanly. But it's been the GT cars that are right next to one another, battling everywhere on the track.
With the GTs all in close proximity, let's do a little speculation here. I'll pick your brain in terms of this type of racing with the Daytona prototypes. So we've got this huge lead right now, but we've seen with other cars when we come to road courses how sometimes drivers will short pit, they'll come and get those fresher tires, and then they'll go out there and turn really good laps and in turn pick up track position, gain ground on the car they're trying to chase down. Is that something that somebody second, third in the Daytona prototype class might do to try and close in some ground on Kyle Hayer?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the best ways to catch him at the moment is the short pit. But all of these guys are going to be coming in with their own strategies. I mean, they have to have optional strategies as well when things don't go their way. This is such a long race with 1.5 miles. A lot of these guys, this endurance racing can be difficult to figure out when you want to pit and when you don't want to pit. If you want to push the car as far as it can go, not. But right now, short pitting is the best option for Kyle in the 07 car to make a move and try to just catch up to Kyle Hayer. I mean, both Kyles are fast. They both look pretty clean compared to all the other prototypes. So the 07's got a chance, but he's got a short pit if he's going to do it.
Seriously trying to figure out here what the strategy is for the 14 of Daniel Resch, because he's right up on the back bumper of Max Lupfer. We saw when Lupfer made the pass, it looked pretty easy, but these cars look pretty equal, but I'm not certain that 14 might not be just a little bit faster. He just doesn't want to make a pass that's going to cause the two of them to make contact and lose position again. Because remember, the last time they battled for the race lead, the two of them made contact and dropped from first and second in the class. So it's hard to tell here if he's just kind of lying in wait and has the better car, or if these guys are, what it looks like, on equal standing.
Well, I would imagine that they're right now just, I mean, I was going to say they're just taking it easy, but you can see that Daniel Resch was trying to make a move on the outside, not able to, got a little bit wide into the grass, slowing him down a bit, but he's still right on Lupfer's back end. Making a move, he can. I mean, he's got the draft right now. He might be pulling in like he is right now, going to be making a move here going into turn number 1.
I think that Daytona prototype coming out of the carousel was what kind of messed Lupfer up just a bit when he went off course and had these guys side by side. But as you mentioned, it looks like it's going to be Resch going back to the lead, or will he? They'll be side by side, maybe going through the S's.
This is one of the more trickier places to go side by side, but it is possible. As they cleanly get through, still side by side. Now this is
door to door.
This is where someone has to give. Who's going to give right here going in to the chicanes?
Oh, and you gotta look at the prototype behind them trying to make his way through. It's like, where do I go? I'm walled in.
You got to slowly wait and then make your move here on the long right-hander. Come on the outside as here they come.
That's another thing that we would have to kind of consider too for Kyle Hayer. I mean, so far he's been able to pretty well maneuver his way past the slower GT class cars, but if he gets himself trapped behind a wall like that, he could lose a ton of track position and a lot of time on track.
Like right there, they were both, I mean, yes, they were spaced out a little bit, but they were basically covering most of the track. Now they're both of the GT cars going to go up high to let Hayer go on by.
And looking at the interval right now, it looks like he did lose ground to the second place car of Kyle Strayhorse. But here's the thing. Strayhorse now has to pass them as well. Here you see him making the move on both of them. So I think that right there, that actually gained the second place car more than it lost him.
Yeah, he's also going to have to try to get by, I believe. Yeah, that is Chad Frankenfield that he's going to have to get by of those 7.
Battle for the lead at least closed up a little bit for the Daytona prototypes. It's now been whittled down to about 4 seconds. As you look here, this is the battle going on for third. Bronson Stafford has it. Bill Daly wants it. This is for the GT class. A driver that has kind of faded back is Shane Theron. I believe the 34 has made a pit stop.
I would imagine so. I'm looking around on his car, and it looks like there isn't any damage. So it looks like a pit stop is what he did. And, you know, with how these cars are racing right now, how aggressive we were seeing the cars earlier in the race. It's good to see that they're taking it easy right now. But you're just seeing these pairs that have just always been together. The top two have been together. The battle for third. These two cars have been on top of each other for the GTs. And they got prototypes, and everyone's just spread out. I don't see a single battle with the prototypes right now. And
we got one right here. Well, we do have one here with fourth place. Jared Campbell got back around Joey Bailey, but they're still in somewhat close proximity to each other.
Somewhat close. I think that is our closest battle of the prototypes.
And we're going to go around the outside there, make the pass on the GT car. This is actually, I believe, yeah, that's first and second place right there. Both Resch and Lupfer of the GT class now letting fourth and fifth of the Daytona prototype class on by. This battle continues on into the chicane.
A little update on the cars that have had issues. Tate Lytle, right now it's showing that he is disconnected from the server, so I believe that his race might be over with all the damage that he has, which is a shame. He was doing quite well in the top 5 with the prototypes.
That's going to be at least a couple of positions that both Brent Jones and Chad Frankenfield can pick up in the Daytona prototype class. It's probably, I think that's the main reason why the two of them are still out there logging laps, is just in case some of the other drivers in their class have some issues, they can pick up those positions.
Yeah, throughout watching practice, one thing that I was seeing a lot of was these prototype cars looked like they were just sticking to the ground very well until you got to the bus stop where there's the rumble strips to worry about. Usually it's either entering or exiting the rumble strips is when it's the scariest part, as we're seeing the battle for fourth picking up in the prototypes.
Definitely is. Campbell and Bailey right within the same proximity of each other. We saw the two of them battle earlier on when Campbell was fourth and Bailey was fifth. Bailey won that exchange. They're going to continue to battle each other here, or if Campbell will actually give the spot up again. I don't know how Campbell got back around Bailey, but it looks like he is going to tuck in line and give the spot up to the 25.
I'm also wondering, with some of these cars that we've seen pits, when are the prototypes going to go in? We thought Tate Lytle was coming in for the pits to get a pit stop, but obviously his race is over for him. So I'm wondering when these prototypes are actually going to be coming in for pit stops. That might change up some of these positions that cars are in. And like we were saying, short pitting is still an option for a lot of these cars.
The only driver in either class that I've really seen utilize the strategy of short pitting up to this point is Shane Theron in the 34. I believe he's the only one out of the GT class that has come to pit road early. Nobody from the Daytona prototype has hit pit road unless they've had to in the case of Jones or Frankenfield. But the top 9 who are currently the remaining Daytona prototype cars still running up to speed, none of them have hit pit road yet, including Rishev Koslaw, who we saw have that, I think it was the first issue out of the bus stop. He's still running on the track, has not come to pit road yet since the green flag.
Looking at the third place battle, looks like there was a slight issue with I think that was Bill Daly having trouble in the bus stop, which made him lose his positions and fall back to, I believe that's 6th place.
Looks like 5th, actually. Ooh, we might have had a little contact there between the 77 and the 61 going through the chicane. That's Drew Eisenman moving his way by Bronson Stafford. Well, actually, not yet moving by. He's still side by side out of the carousel. He's trying to move into the 3rd position for the GT class. And look at this. Oh, my goodness. We got prototypes going up the middle there, splitting them 3 wide just out of the exit of the chicane out of that straightaway.
It's just one of those scary things. You want to try to meet up with the GTs at the right place. And luckily, they met up kind of at a safer place than at the bus stop, which has been one of the scariest places. You have to really slow down so you don't run into anyone.
This battle continuing for 3rd. Stafford and Eisenman, and you got another prototype behind them trying to make his way around. He'll go to the inside through turn 1. He's going to think clear Stafford. Don't know if he's going to clear Eisenman here in the S's. Yes, he will. And that's got to be so difficult, too, I would have to think, for the GT class, because, you know, you're battling for position, and then you've got to mentally switch gears and get out of the way of a prototype. And while you're doing that, the car that you're battling for position could move right on by you.
Yeah, I feel bad for Rofe just because he keeps on getting and catching everyone, entering a corner with these GT cars, and he's had to slow down so much. He's been right there whenever the leaders are going too wide, or you got the battle for third a couple of laps ago, and they were 3 wide. Seems like he's always finding the GT cars at the worst possible moment.
We have currently hit past the half-hour mark. We're now into the second half hour of this race. Still yet to really see any of the leaders in either class come to pit road. And that's going to be the tough thing, too, because, you know, this is a timed race. So we can't say, oh, they came to pit road so many laps in, they came to pit road so many minutes in. So that's going to make it interesting in terms of trying to calculate as we get to the closing stages of how many more stops they'd have to make before this race is over.
I mean, it's a lot of math, but I mean, you can't say what lap they pit on and then see, okay, they lasted that long with that amount of time. Okay, when's the next time that they might be pitting or might be short pitting? I mean, if you got these guys that are so close to one another, as we're seeing the 14 car in the GT class pulling away just a little bit from Max Lofer.
About a second and a half right now between himself and the second place car of the GT class. And we got a couple cars on pit road. Shane Theron, the 34, is on pit road, and there's another of the GT cars on pit lane. To tell who that was. There might actually been an incident with the 34, which is what we're going back to look at. Oh, yes, there was indeed. Coming through the final few corners there. Here it is. This is what happened to Shane Theron, and just over the curb, just too much. Tried to correct it, and that's heavy contact with the left front into both the tire barrier and then later the steel guardrail, and I believe he's actually taken the car back behind the wall.
Looks like it. He's disconnected from the server.
Believe that other GT car I saw on pit road was the 86 of Ethan Riesener.
Yeah, Ethan Riesener is still in pit road. Wait to see if he's going to be making any moves to get out or if he's trying to repair damage.
Goes out. He's got an opportunity to pass the 34 for position.
Yeah, you never know if someone else might make a huge mistake and their race will be over. You really hope that that doesn't happen.
Eisenman now is firmly in control of third for the GT class. You're watching the battle for fourth. Bill Daly now has reeled Bronson Stafford back in. You can see, you mentioned the fact that, you know, it looked like Bill Daly had fallen back a little bit, had maybe had an issue. You can see clearly down around the front splitter area, down on the right front, there is a bit of damage. So that might have been what caused him to drop back. Might have had a little bit of an issue there.
Yeah, that happened, and Bronson Stafford also back. But I mean, we still have Bill Daly and Bronson Stafford right on top of each other.
We saw that little bit of damage there on Bill Daly. You know, with these cars being as low to the ground as they are, we're at a road course. Can damage like that affect the handling of a race car?
Oh, completely. When you're messing with front end, it's close to the engine, and it could be messing with any type of engine damage, or could be messing with aero damage, making it difficult to turn either left or right. Matters on where you're getting the damage on.
You can hear at the third place car of the Daytona prototypes, Justin Johansson. I actually noticed too that we've got Justin Johansson the 74, Jake Johansson in the 06. I wonder if there's any relation there. Maybe a couple of brothers racing with each other.
Oh, you also have that same thing with the 00 in the...
Oh, hard hit! Someone just clobbered the wall. I think that was Kosla on the 54. Almost the identical thing that we saw happen to Theron a couple of laps before. I think he overstepped that corner, and he nosed it hard into the tire barriers as well.
It looks like he got onto the rumble stretch, felt it get loose. He tried to save it and overcorrected right into the barrier and right back into the tire barrier on the other side.
That was right in front, if I'm not mistaken, of the GT class leader, Daniel Resch. So he had a perfect view of that one. It's the second incident that Coleslaw has been involved in today, and that's going to be a lot more damage sustained because that's going to, as you mentioned, be right up around the front of the race car, which can really affect how that car is going to run the remainder of this race.
Yeah, there's possible that there might be too much damage with that car. He's just limping it back to see if he can repair his car fully. But he's only one lap down, and the next GT car that he will be in front of is going to be the 98 of Brent Jones, who's 10 laps down.
Yeah.
So he still has time to get that repair on his car, unless it is extremely bad. There's no way to repair that vehicle.
The battle for the race lead for the GT class has gone away. Daniel Resch has really opened up the gap now by over 2 seconds back to Max Lufer. This is the best battle right now for the GT class. Bronson Stafford, Bill Daly still battling with each other, and again, a terrible place for Rolf Just in the 43 to encounter GT cars just out of the carousel corner.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you don't expect him to always be in those bad spots, but somehow he's there every single time. It's just one of those things when you're racing in these sports series, you just hope that you catch all of these GT cars at the right time, and sometimes you do and sometimes you don't.
And you would think that you know the odds would in some way be in your favor because there are quite a number of straightaways here at the Glen. You got the front straightaway, the S's are kind of a little bit of a passing zone. You got that straightaway out of the S's to the chicane, and then you got that straightaway out of the carousel. But I don't know, it just seems like every corner that Rolf Just takes, there's a GT car right in his way.
I'm watching the Bronson Stafford and Bill Daly battle going on, and out of turn number 1, Bronson Stafford took it a little bit high, which gave Bill Daly space to close up on Bronson Stafford, but I don't think he has enough speed to really pass him here. They're going to try to see if they try to make any moves here at the carousel. Looks like they're going to play it safe. Bill Daly gets on the brake early.
That's, if I'm not mistaken, I think that's the race leader just behind them, starting to close in of the Daytona prototype class.
Could be. There's just so much action going on.
Oh, nope, I'm sorry. I thought it was him, but nope, the race leader of the Daytona prototypes is actually over in the S's right now. Looked like a similar scheme, so that's why I thought that was who it was, but nope, I am incorrect. Bailey just now making his way around there. He's the 5th place car of the Daytona prototypes, a guy that actually got around him. We're now focusing on him, 00 of, I believe that's pronounced Matt Shanensky. Shanansky.
It's all right. Some of these names are very difficult to say.
They are. Some of them are. Some of them are easy. Some of them are difficult. Sometimes the ironic thing is you try and pronounce a difficult name and usually you get it right. You try and pronounce a simple name and it's pronounced some other way. So maybe I got it right. Who knows?
Who knows? Maybe we'll ask after the race to figure out, hey, did we say your name right during our broadcast? But right now I'm watching Gerald Campbell going through the carousel, and he went through the bus stop the wrong way, kind of. He was going through the dirt to stay on track.
And to get around this battle here between Stafford and Daly, and decided, you know what, I'll go where they ain't. Right now, 6th in the Daytona prototype class. This is the battle continuing on for 4th between Stafford and Daly. Campbell has now lost touch with... oh wait, we got a issue here. Or is this just one driver letting another driver by? But Stafford looked really slow there on the front straightaway as Daly got around him. I don't know if that was gentlemanly moving over and giving up the position or what. I don't know. It just looked like that car was really slow on the straightaway.
Might have been a miss click with the gears, but also I've been seeing Bronson struggling to entering. Turn 1 has been his hardest part of the track so far. But he might be making a move here going into the bus stop.
Be side by side between these two potentially. Nope, not quite. Stafford wasn't quite to the left rear quarter panel. Like Daly might have gotten off course just a tiny little bit there with the left side tires on the entrance to the chicane. But as you mentioned, this right here really is the best battle going on in either class. Just to update, Kosla has brought the car to pit road. He is currently sitting on the pit lane. He, according to the scoring, 3 laps ahead of the next driver that would pass him for position, Brent Jones. It will all depend on how much longer he stays on pit road in the 54, but looks like he is going to try to at least continue. Some of the prototypes making their way around the GT cars as this battle for third place continues on. Pretty much the top 3 of the GT class have all separated themselves not only from 4th place battle, but also from each other. Resch firmly in control. He's got about 3.5 seconds back to Lufer in 2nd. And then Drew Eisenman currently slotted in the 3rd position. He is, I believe, roughly around 40 seconds behind the current leader of the GT class. And this battle's starting to heat up a little bit here between the 00 and the 25 for 4th place as they're working their way around the GT cars.
There was almost an incident going on with the 07 and the prototypes and Bronson Stafford. They were going into the bus stop, and Bronson, they were trying to figure out how to go to the bus stop cleanly together. Yet there was a little bit of contact, which the GT cars just went straight through the bus stop instead of trying to do the regular course to avoid any incidences with the prototypes. That was a very close to being a very scary situation of 2 cars getting into it.
Kyle Streihart's running in 2nd, as you mentioned, and that lost him a lot of ground having to check up for that. He's now 9 seconds, over 9 seconds back behind the race leader, Kyle Hare, and I'm really surprised because we are now heading into the halfway point of this race. We are about to hit 45 minutes remaining, and we've still not yet seen these drivers hit pit road. So this says to me, if they can make it, maybe 2-3 more laps, it's a one-stop race, I would assume then.
Oh, totally. If they've been driving for this long, we're getting to halfway marker. Makes sense that this would be a one-stopper. So now you got to wonder if anyone's going to try short pit, or people are going to push it as far as they can so we have the freshest tires for the end of the race.
Let's put ourselves in the shoes of Kyle Streihart's right now. In that 2nd position, he's 9 seconds back. Do you in any way see it possible with short pitting for him to be able to make up enough ground to challenge, or is he going to need help of maybe the race leader encountering slower traffic or something? I think we just had one of the prototypes actually just hit pit road.
Believe that was Chad Frankenfield going into the pits. This could be our first pit stop, or he might be just coming in to get some fuel and continue on racing from there.
He's 10 laps down right now, currently next to last of the remaining running Daytona prototype cars. I believe he would currently be 11th of the Daytona prototypes.
But yeah, to answer your question, honestly, I think that he's going to need help from all these GT cars to help slow down the leader, because this is such a large gap that even short pitting, he might just gain 3 seconds at most. He's not going to be gaining 9 seconds, though. There's no way that I can see that unless there is a huge mistake that happens from Kyle Hare.
That strategy is all out the window, because you just saw there with our pit lane cam and our onboard cam, Kyle Hare was actually the first driver to hit pit road of the Daytona prototype. So he is the one that's used the short pit strategy from the race lead.
Well, it's if he's going to be short pitting now, I would just try to push your. It's kind of a risk or reward right now to just push it as far as you want to go. push your car or pit now and see if you can just gain time.
He came to pit road past 45 minutes left. I think he pitted with about 40, either 44 or 44 and a half minutes remaining. So he's right there on the cusp of being past the 45 minutes threshold, which means that, according to calculations, he should be good to go the rest of the way. That now turns the lead over to the 07 of Kyle Stryhars. And now we'll have to see if his hand's been forced, and now he'll have to probably maybe come to pit road this time.
Also in the GT, second place, Max Lofer is going to be up, coming to the pits, which gives second place to, I believe, Drew Eselman.
So it does. We should mention, too, just the gap that Kyle Hare had been able to open up. Even with making that pit stop, he's running in the third position.
Yeah, that's the one thing that's kind of terrifying about this is, yes, he pit, and there's a 30-second gap now from him to the leader, which is going to shrink due to the newer tires and having all this fuel. I'm wondering if pitting now is the best option, just so that you don't lose as much time.
Another car on pit road. That's the 74 of Justin Johansson. He's going to give up second position to do so. Johansson's been running up there inside the top 5 for a good portion of the last 20 to 25 minutes. And still, the 07 decides to stay out.
You know, while looking at the lap times from last lap to now for these cars, Hare is running about tenths faster just each lap. And we're going to see if we're going to see the 07 come in this time or not. You think he'd be coming in soon. And he's
I think he'd have to.
He's going to be staying out for another lap.
And we've also yet to see really any others of the GT class, with the exception of Lufer, come to pit road. See if Lufer is able to close up any ground between himself and Daniel Resch after the two of them complete their pit stops. I think the gap between the two of them in the battle for the GT class lead was about 3 seconds. So we'll see if that closes up, or even if there is a lead change when the 14 finally comes to pit lane.
Yet another lap, Rishak Khosla, I believe that was Khosla that's back running. I think he just had a spin. Could be wrong. Yeah, no, he did. Coming out of the bus stop, spun it around, dumped it into the wall again. Rough day for him. I think that's about the 4th spin out that he's had.
Here with the onboard with the 54. Yeah, that's the 3rd time at least that he's been off course. Yeah, it's a pretty good hit there. It was out of the bus stop. His 2nd incident was out of the next to last corner, and his 3rd incident again out of the bus stop. He has really been struggling today.
And he did just get out. I mean, at least he's running now. So it's going to be him and Brent Jones and Chad Frankenfield. They're all 10 laps down. It's going to be tricky here to see if he's able to hold off between those two cars that are coming to chase him down.
Remember, Frankenfield was on pit road not too long ago, so he would have fresh tires. Khosla was on pit lane about maybe, I would say, 7, 8, 9 laps ago, repairing damage after his 2nd incident. And I would assume that the damage he just sustained there out of the carousel would probably slow him down even more. For, at least up here in the front of our 8 top cars of the Daytona prototypes, we're still waiting for 6 of them to hit pit road. The only ones that have come to pit road are the 74 of Justin Johansson, currently running in 3rd, and the car just ahead of him, 2nd place, Kyle Hare. We're still waiting for Stryhars, Shinosky, Bailey, Campbell, Jake Johansson, and Rolf Just, all to be coming to pit lane here.
Well, Well, the 07, yes, is losing time to Kyle Hare, but he's not losing like seconds. They're like tenths that he's losing right now each lap. So it's not like he's losing a ton of time here. So that's the one good news of him staying out. I think he's just hoping that he's going to have fresher tires so he can make these runs and run a little bit faster later on in the race. While Hare is planning on just trying with that short pit, maybe to gain some time and have a big enough lead once all these green flag pit stops happen.
Yeah, to your point, the last 3 laps, he has not lost any more than 3/10 to the 95. So you're right, he's not losing huge chunks of time to Kyle Hare. He is, though, only about 29 seconds ahead, so I don't think he'd be able to come to pit road, get a pit stop done, leave pit road without losing the race lead. But to your point, with the fact that it seems like the two of them speed-wise are pretty close, and the 07 is on older tires, you'd have to think maybe that Stryhars it has a little something in the bank. If you put fresh tires on that car, he might be able to chip into Kyle Hare's lead and have something for him at the end.
I mean, that's the news for the prototypes, but if you go to the GTs, it's a completely different story, as Max Lofer is just locking down these lap times that are so much faster than the team car.
Actually made his way around the 77 of Drew Eisen. That was an exchange for second out of the GT class, and he is now about 46 seconds back behind the race leader of the GT class, the 14 of Daniel Resch. But again, the 14 still has to hit pit road. Lufer's already made his pit stop for the day. Good battle still continuing on for 4th place between Matt Shinosky and the 25 of Joey Bailey. The two of them have kind of been within the same proximity of each other the last, I would say, 8 to 10 laps. And I think there might have been an issue for Bailey coming off the final corner. He might have brushed the wall. We'll take a look and see here. Through the final left-hander and runs it up a little wide. Yeah, he did make contact with the left side. That's tire barriers there too, so not sure how badly that's going to affect him on the long haul, but a little bit of an overdrive there. And that's another thing about Watkins Glen that we haven't talked about that we do have to factor in. Older tires, when they get up on that rumble strip, those rumble strips are painted. And with the sun beating down, those rumble strips are slick. So you get up there and it gives you a little bit of an aid going through the corner, but if you carry too much speed, there's no grip there to stop you from going up and hitting the wall.
We got this battle for Joe Daly and Matt Shinosky. I'm gonna have trouble with that name for a while, but
I'm glad I'm not the only one that struggled with it.
These two cars are probably the closest battle that we're gonna have for the lead, and it's a close one. This is probably the closest that we've seen all race long between the GTs since they've all been spread out so much.
Saw Bailey get the wall there off the final corner. That really hasn't seemed to slow him down, though. He still has been able to reel the 00 in. And it looks like he is now within striking distance to maybe make a move. Boy, he was a lot better through the carousel. And it looks like he may try to make a pass down here into this left-hander potentially. Will he step out of line? No, he's going to follow him through instead, as I think they're closing up here on a GT car pretty soon. Time he got off the final corner correctly, didn't slide it up. You gotta think too, though, both these cars are yet to come to pit road. They're on slicker tires, so does that play into the mentality of, okay, I don't have as much grip as I had before to try and make a move on this guy? I would think you'd have to be a little bit more picky on where you make the attempt to pass for a position.
Yeah, I mean, passing someone on the straightaways or into turn 8, 9, or even the first corner. Sometimes, I mean, with how slick these tires could be right now, the S's might be the tricky place to make that move, but it's still possible.
Lead has exchanged. Kyle Hare has now gone back to the top position in the 95, taking the lead away from Kyle Stryhars. And you look right here, not too far back. You've got this battle still for the 4th position. This is going on, I believe, about 40 seconds back from the race leader. Car, I believe, hit pit road. I'm not certain who that was.
That is Arthur Lace, 77.
Yes, it was. Yep, Drew Eisenman. Now, he is the second of the GT class to hit pit lane. Lufer was the first, and up to this point only, before the 77 ducked onto pit road. And, oh my goodness, trying to make their way around Lufer were Bailey and Shinosky. Into a very interesting battle. The 25 actually used the 888 as a pick and was able to move to the 4th position as a result just before the bus stop.
Still waiting to see some of these cars come in pit road. I wonder if they're trying to just, at this point, push the car as far as they can go with the times they're running. They're running not as... I mean, everyone's running, even with older tires to newer tires, about the same speed. So just running your car out there, I mean, yeah, you might be losing a little bit of time here and there, but it's not a bad tactic to just push your car as far as you can go.
Saw right there Brian Zableski in the 12. He is 5th of the GT cars right now, but this battle is not going to go away. Joey Bailey may have made the pass for 4th, but Matt Shinosky is not letting him gap him by any means. It's still about 2 car lengths between the two as they're going to make their way around a couple of the GT cars going through the bus stop here. They passed one prior, and they're about to pass one here, possibly into the carousel.
Ooh! They had to slow up just a little bit more. Caught him at the wrong place in the middle of the corner. But Joey Bailey...
wanted to go... I think Bailey wanted to go to the inside and was forced to go around the outside there. Make their way now around Bill Daly. Brian Zableski just up around there as well. That's actually a battle that's going on in the GT class between the 12 and the 72 for 5th place.
Yeah, Bill Daly went in. Once he hit the pit stops and went for his stop, he's actually been losing time, which has been kind of odd to see.
Talked about how Lufer looked like he was starting to close in on Daniel Resch. Well, it's kind of similar to what we were talking about before between Heyer and Streichars. The lap times now seem to be somewhat similar between the two, and the 14 is on much older tires. That makes me wonder, it kind of makes me wonder with the fall off here, like the new tires maybe are only good for 2-3 laps, and then it kind of just evens out again.
Well, I don't even think that he's getting that much of an advantage. It's just based off having to slow up for these prototype cars, or for the prototypes, it's catching all the GT cars, and just the speed difference and having to slow down for one another. It's really affecting these times to where they're not running clean laps all the time. They're always catching someone. How I've spread out everyone.
On board with Bill Daly as he's closing in on Zablensky, the 12 car. That is for 5th place. Right now, I believe the best battle on the track still for the Daytona prototypes is still going on for 4th place between Bailey and Shinosky. The gap, though, has opened up a little bit more since we last looked. It's now about maybe 7 to 8 car lengths, whereas before it was only 2 to 3. So I think Bailey now seems to be pretty well in control of that 4th position as he's beginning to put a little bit of daylight between himself and the 00.
Yeah, Bailey's been able, whenever he's in clean air and just able to just run in the lap and get into a rhythm, seems to be a little bit faster than 00.
Here's an interesting thing. I was just looking at the lap times here, and between the top two, Heyer and Streichars just ran a faster lap the last time around. He was about a 10th quicker. So he is still losing some time. He's about 12.5 seconds behind Heyer. I mean, we don't really know the full extent of just how far he can go, as I don't think he's yet made his pit stop. At least I didn't see it. Maybe you did. But I just don't know with how we're seeing the fresh tires seem to kind of go away and even out to the older tires so quickly. I don't really think that staying out this long, coming to pit road, getting tires later on in the race is going to gain him a whole lot if he continues to really even lose 1 to 2 tenths each lap here to Hayer's fresher tires.
Well, they're both have pitted, so they're both on fresh tires. The 07 actually has the freshest of tires too. But I don't think that there is enough time, even if the 07 was running faster laps, I don't think there's enough time for him to catch up. I mean, we're, 30 minutes? Almost 30 minutes to the end?
28 minutes away, yep.
Yeah, less than 30 minutes. I don't think there's enough time for him to catch him. But it's just about running your laps, trying to stay clean and get past these slower cars.
I have to think back, in the Elite Mega Driver 86 series, when they were back at, I want to say it was at Tsukuba, a driver, which I think at the time was Chad Frankenfield, had a huge lead, and he caught a slower machine in just the wrong spot, and what was about a 12-second gap closed up to about 4 seconds in 2 laps. I mean, we could see that same scenario happen here. It's 15 seconds right now between the race leader Hayer and second place Stryhars, but if Hayer catches some GT cars in just the wrong corners, if he has some Rolf Just luck here in the final half hour, we could see that battle for the race lead in the Daytona prototypes close up very quickly.
Yeah, I mean, it's really up to if these lead cars get into any issue with the GTs or even with lap cars from the prototypes. Right now, Hayer's been catching all these cars in a pretty safe place. There hasn't been any have to woe up too much for any of these slower cars, as he just keeps on gapping second place more and more each lap.
Watching here this battle continue on. This is for the 5th position in the GT class between Brian Zableski and Bill Daly, but at the same time these guys are battling, they are slowly reeling in the 4th place GT car of Bronson Stafford. So we could potentially, before this race is over, have a 3-way fight for 4th between Stafford, Zableski, and Daly.
Which these cars have all been around the same area this whole entire race. It would be good to see them racing at it for 4th.
Not far back behind them. You got Joshua Personette as well. He is 7th in the GT class, and he's not that far behind these guys either. So he might be able to get up here and maybe sneak out a top 5 in the GT class as we follow back up on this 4th place battle between Bailey and Shinosky. He can still see the 25. He's not been able to really close the gap up, though. I think the two of them have kind of evened each other out. And boy, oh boy, Shinosky really drove it in deep into turn 1 there, gained some time, but gotta wonder just how much he wore out the front tires doing that.
I mean, we're coming to the end of the point where you might just want to throw everything you have just to make a pass, try to make some moves.
About a driver kind of making the best of a bad situation, Chad Frankenfield, who had issues very early on in this event. He's been able to go out there, log laps. He has been able to pick up some spots here. He's gotten around Brent Jones. He just got around Rishav Kosla not too long ago. So right now he would be... Oh, we got a car off track, I think. I think Joey Bailey just spun it on the top of the carousel. I think I saw some smoke lingering back there. I think he did lose it. Yes, he did. He made contact, actually, with one of the GT cars. I think that was Bill Daly in the 72.
It's one of those places where cars are slowing up, and as a faster prototype, you got to slow up even more than what other cars are doing in front of you. It's so much harder with these GT cars that were already battling, maybe didn't realize how close the prototypes were closing in, and just a little bit of mishap on closing speed.
That's the second time, to my knowledge, that Joey Bailey has wanted to take the inside against a GT car into the carousel, and the first time he was fortunate enough to be able to swing to the outside and get around, but he was not given the inside line at that point, and he wasn't given the inside line there, and as you saw, just the closing rate between himself and the 72, and the both of them went around, and as consequence, that just lost Joey Bailey the 4th position again.
Well, also, just a little bit more in that incident is that Bill Daly was just staying in the middle of the track, wasn't moving, and Max Loafer actually got into contact there and is now in the pits.
I just saw that as well. Yep, he is now back in 6th of the GT cars, and he's on pit road. And that is a car that was running up inside the top 2 pretty much of the GT class all day long.
Yeah, that was something I was just about to bring up, is I don't think the 14 car has pitted yet. He's been out here for so long. I don't know.
Oh, you're right. He has not pitted. He's the only, actually, I believe he's the only car still running out of both classes that has not yet hit pit road.
So it was going to be interesting to see how that was going to work out, if Loafer was going to be able to have enough time to catch up, or if there was enough gap to when the 14 pitted that he was going to still have the lead, or if he was going to lose it. But now with that incident, now it's kind of a survive, and you'll probably win this.
You saw right there, Lupfer coming around the carousel, kind of a blind corner, and as you mentioned, the 72 never moved, stayed in the middle of the track, and there was nowhere for Lupfer to go. I would say the black smoke we just saw coming out from underneath the hood there, that's going to spell the end of the day for Lupfer in that 688, and that is such a tough break, and as you mentioned, also kind of takes away what could have been a pretty good mix of strategies and a potential battle for the win in the GT class.
Right now, I think the battle's for the lead for both the prototypes and the GT cars. It's kind of a done deal with how much we're seeing Kyle Hayter just pull away now even more, as it's almost up to 19 seconds of a gap that he has on the 07.
And going back to the GT class, Daniel Resch right now, yes, he does still have to come to pit road, but even with the older tires, he is over 40 seconds ahead of second in that class, which right now is the 77 of Drew Eisenman.
Which is still kind of close. I think it was about 30, 35 seconds with these pit stops. So, I mean, there's still a possible chance that when this 14 car finally pits, that we might see some action for the lead. But we're running out of time, and he might pit, and he might be just saving fuel to try to make it last all the way.
The thing I would kind of wonder about, whether we would have ourselves a battle between the 14 and the 77 is really, it looked like the only 2 cars that really were battling for the lead all race long in the GT class were Resch and Lupfer. So I would have assumed that Lupfer would have probably been that one that could get up there. Eisenman has been running, 3rd or 4th in the GT class all day, but he hasn't really been up in the conversation for the lead. So with the fact that he's losing ground to the older tires of Resch right now, and if Resch comes to pit road, he's going to have those fresher tires anyway. I almost think it might, at this point, be a done deal for the potential win in the GT class. But again, you got to think back to the early stages of this race. We ended up having the 2 drivers that were battling for the race lead, then Resch and Lupfer get together. They spun out in 1st and 2nd. We've had a lot of guys up there in the Daytona prototypes that have been running up inside the top 3. They had issues early. So, stuff like that can still happen here in the closing stages of the race as well.
Totally can happen. I mean, with how fast this 14 car is running, he just ran below a 122, which has been, everyone's been running around a 22, 23. And that's even like the fastest we've seen these cars run during practice and qualifying, which was the last lap that the 14 just ran for the GTs.
I believe, if I'm looking at this correctly, I believe the 14 has been out on the racetrack. I think it says 51 laps. Does it surprise you that a car has been able to stay out that long?
A little bit. I honestly thought that he'd be in at most until the hour marker, but he's just been still trugging along. He might be saving fuel, but at the same time, with how fast he's running, he might be just pushing it just as hard as he was earlier in the race.
believe that the next car out there that has been out the longest in terms of making a pit stop, I want to say is in the Daytona prototype class. He's been out for 29 laps, I believe. So huge difference between how long the 14 and the GT classes stayed out, as opposed to not only his own class but the Daytona prototypes as well.
Well, looking at the prototypes a little bit more, Chad Frankenfield, I didn't say it earlier, but about 15 minutes ago, that's when he made the pass on Ryszard Kosla. Kosla's car is mangled, and he's going to be limping that to the end of the race. Hopefully he has no more instances of accidents, of him spinning out. That car is a mess, with the back wing all crooked and the front end being all dented as well.
I mean, if you're going to look at the silver lining of the gray cloud today for Ryszard Kosla, you have to look at the fact he's been involved in 3 incidents. Basically, all 3 of them have just been him involved as far as solo car spins, but he's running 10th of the Daytona prototypes, and he's running ahead of 5 other Daytona prototype machines. So despite all the damage, despite all the incidents he's had today, at least he's going to have maybe a little bit of something to salvage.
Yeah, and with how slow Brent Jones is going, all that Ryszard Kosla needs to do is just finish the race. Yes, he's running pretty slow compared to all the other prototypes, but he's still running faster than Brent Jones, who is the only other prototype car that is behind him running.
Gap right now from first back to second in the Daytona prototypes is 23 seconds. We have now hit 17 minutes left to go. Everybody, in terms of the Daytona prototype, should be good to go on fuel. So it's basically you got what you got, and you're just trying to run to the checkers. We're still kind of waiting to see what's going to develop when the 14 comes to pit road. He's been out there 53 laps, about to complete the 53rd lap here. We're still waiting for him to come to pit road, and we'll see if there is going to be a battle potentially between himself and Drew Eisenman. And he's, I believe, well,
he's coming
is hitting pit road. Yeah, I thought he was slowing off that corner, and he is finally going to pit with about 16 and a half minutes left in this race.
Now, I'm wondering with the gap that he has, if he's going to be coming in just to take tires and fuel, take the least amount of fuel that's really needed, so he doesn't have a long fuel window here. But is he going to try to stay for a little bit longer to get fixed on his wing, or does he feel confident that his car's fast enough to continue being out there? Because he does have a little bit of damage, but...
We're looking right here at the car of Drew Eisenman, who currently is just now unlapping himself. He was a lap down to Daniel Resch. He just went around to get his lap back. So he's still got to make up an entire racetrack if he's going to catch up to the 14, who is right now just leaving pit road.
Leaving pit road with not a lot of time left in this race. This has been an amazing run for this 14 machine. He had early instances of accidents. He got the back end a little bit more fixed. Well, I mean, he had the accident going on the first couple of laps where everyone was just racing super aggressive in the early parts, to now being in the lead with no one around him that really is going to be challenging him for the lead. All he has to worry about are all these lap cars and trying to let these prototypes get past him.
I think maybe the thing he'll have to worry about more is getting out of the way of the faster Daytona prototypes rather than the slower GT cars. So as of right now, as far as we're looking for the potential race leaders for trying to win this race, right now, Heyer has a 22-second gap back to Stryhars. And then in terms of the GT class, the 14 of Daniel Resch currently has almost a minute and 45 seconds back to the 77. So it is, oh, we got a car off there, of course. That's one of the prototypes, and I couldn't tell who that was. It might have actually been Brent Jones in the 98. It was.
Brent Jones still having a struggle today, but at least he's going to be able to finish the race, which some other cars were not able to, as long as he keeps it on track for the last couple of minutes here.
As of right now, Kyle Heyer just basically trying to make his way around for the final 14 minutes. We're on board here with the 98 of Brent Jones, and kind of hard to tell what happened there. Just like the car kind of stepped out from underneath him. He didn't run wide and get the rumble strips, which you've seen a lot of drivers do in that portion of the track. I don't know if necessarily, maybe he wheel hopped or something, but as stated, his car went around. Nobody else hit him, though. He continues on. And the gap has closed a little bit between Resch and Eisenman. It's now down to 1 minute and 6 seconds, but still over a minute to try and make up with 13 and a half minutes in this race. It's almost looking like it's completely out of the realm of possibility.
Yeah, I mean, there was a little bit of Resch trying to pass some cars and having prototypes try to pass them at the same time. A lot of being tight racing by the S's, so it makes sense that it was slowed up for that. While you have Esselman going in and having pretty much a clean lap with no one really around him. Makes sense why he would gain a little bit of time there.
As of this moment, looks like it's not that much traffic ahead of Kyle Hayer. He's got the 54 of Rishev Kosla, who's obviously damaged and off the pace, up ahead that he will have to pass. And then the next two cars ahead of him are actually a couple of Daytona prototypes as well, running in the 4th and 5th position. He would encounter Joey Bailey and Matt Shinosky, and obviously with them running faster, I don't think they're going to be as much of an issue for him in terms of reeling them in these final 12 and a half minutes.
Whoa, looking at Justin Johansson. Got a little wide into the dirt trying to get past the 14 car at the long right-hander after the bus stop.
A little bit of damage, it looks like, there as well to the right front. But still a very solid outing for Justin Johansson, currently in that 3rd position. And that's where he's been running pretty much before those pit stops began as well. So it's been a very solid outing for him. Currently, again, at where the 95 is running. There are a couple of the GT cars that he might catch. The 12 of Brian Zablensky, the 61 of Bronson Stafford. They're not that far ahead. They're just now going through the S's. The 95 was just going through turn 1, so I think he will catch them. It's all a matter of how he maneuvers around them.
Yeah, you kind of hope that you catch these GT cars on a straightaway so you pass them cleanly. In a corner, it can get tricky. Either you or the GT car can get a little sideways, which can ruin your race if you get into contact. Which it looks like he might be catching these guys in the corner.
We got contact. We got one car around. That is Bronson Stafford. We saw it live. It was hard to tell who the car was that made contact with him. He's right in the middle of the track there in the carousel as well. Now he brings it up to the top, and everybody, I think, is going to clear him safely. But again, almost kind of like what we saw happen earlier between Bailey and Daly. Well, that's an interesting combination there, but where a Daytona prototype was trying to make a pass on a GT in the carousel.
Trying to make a pass, and luckily everyone got out of that cleanly except for Bronson Stafford, who was the car that got into the wreck and had his car smashed up. But everyone else was able to get around him cleanly.
Right there, he actually went through the grass heading into the carousel after he exited the bus stop, which also is going to lose you quite a bit of momentum. And that closing rate, again, just the Daytona prototype wanting the bottom. Bronson Stafford was going to give him the top, and you see the end result. And that's a tough break there for Bronson, because Bronson was running 3rd of the GT class. That now drops him back into the 5th spot.
Yeah, it was a clean race that he was having so far. I mean, there was some earlier in the race, about halfway as well. But, I mean, he was clean in 3rd. I mean, there was a chance that him and the 12 were about to have a battle. They were pretty close to one another, but sadly he got into spinning out. I mean, besides the spin out, luckily he was able to get out of the way for everyone, which is a great positive for everyone on track.
that moved Brian Zablinski up to third in the GT class. Joshua Personette now up to fourth. Looking here at Jake Johansson, the 06. We haven't talked about him a lot today, but he is currently in the 7th position. Been a very solid outing for him as well. Doesn't really have anybody to race right now. Jared Campbell is 13 seconds ahead of him, and Rolf Just is quite a ways back. I believe he is actually an entire lap behind the 06, so nobody to battle, but right now just kind of riding his race and a solid outing in the 7th position for him.
Just a couple more minutes till they get to the end of this race. It's been a long one. Well, you gotta still stay focused,
just wait.
Drivers.
Way around the second place car of the GT class, Drew Eisenman. The next slower car of that class that he would catch, I believe, is the 87 of Richard Hines. Good job keeping out of everybody's way. He's actually running pretty well himself with drivers like Lufer and Daly having issues. He's right now 6th of the GT class. Out of the way of a prototype there. That actually was the race leader that he was moving out of the way of, allowing Kyle Hayer to move on by. Next GT car he would catch, I think, is, well, actually no, he's not too far away from catching another Daytona prototype of Brent Jones, who is damaged. But he's pretty close to catching him, and then I think the next car he would catch after that, I believe, is the 43. So right now, a lot of cars that are ahead of him are not the slower GT cars, they're actually the Daytona prototypes. So in these final 7 minutes, right now it's looking like pretty smooth sailing for a guy that has kept his nose clean all day long.
You know, a car that had a lot of trouble early on was in pit roads for a couple, like 10 laps or so, was Chad Frankenfield. And right now, he's actually battling with the 07 up here, going across the line now. Chad Frankenfield's car looks pretty nice compared to how it was earlier in the race. Really did fix that car up nicely. And now he's able to battle up with some of the top guys.
That's one of the tough things about these kind of endurance races as well, the timed races, especially at road courses where you get the sectional yellows and not the full course yellows. You make a mistake early, it's just so difficult to be able to rebound back, even though his issue was early on. Here, even, 1 hour and 24 minutes in, he's only been able to rebound up to the 9th position. The next car ahead of him is 8 laps ahead in Rolf Just. So while that car, as you mentioned, looks like he could be up there in terms of speed as a contender, up inside of the top 3, just that early mistake cost him, and there just was not enough time with the way that these road courses, endurance races work, not enough of an opportunity to recover. And I'm looking at his lap times right now, and his lap times are right up there in the same realm as Stryhars and Justin Johansson, Matt Shinosky, guys that are running 2nd, 3rd, and 4th place.
Gotta say, Hayer's probably
5 minutes.
Laps right now.
He's actually the only one that last time around that ran a lap in the 1 minute 7 second range.
I mean, that's faster than what people were running in practice and qualifying. So these guys, the grip on the track is there. They're able to push the cars a little bit harder.
Actually, as I'm looking at this, yeah, Kyle Hayer just ran his fastest lap of the race that last time by. Time by a little bit slower. 1 minute, 8 seconds. But still, I mean, as you said, he has picked up the pace for sure. The gap right now in the GT class Gap between Resch and Eisenman is 1 minute and 14 seconds. The gap for the Daytona prototypes between Heyer and Streichars is about 25 seconds. Again, for those two, Heyer and Resch, it's all about not making mistakes. 4 minutes left to go. And as you mentioned, too, you know, they're going to make it here to the end of the when we get to zeros on the clock. They still got one more lap to go around to make it official.
Yeah, but it's looking like no one's really close to anyone at the moment unless a mistake happens. These guys are pretty spread out, and there's not really going to be any changes unless someone has an incident with either themselves making a mistake or if they run into another car. Speaking of mistake,
we got a spinner!
That's Gerald Campbell.
Yes, it is. The 31 of Campbell, who was running, I believe, in 5th. No, I'm sorry, 4th of the Daytona prototype class, spinning around. That drops him back to 6th.
Like I was saying, it's up to you to make the mistake or to get involved with someone else. And you saw it right there. It's been the same spot all race long where cars are getting onto that rumble strip and they're just losing it, trying to keep their car into control. It's either overcorrection or they just completely lose the back end.
Just gotten around Joshua Personet's GT. And there you see him looping it around. Now, fortunately for him, a lot of guys we've seen spin in that section of the course have put it into the tire wall. He might have made a little bit of contact there with the left rear, but not that much. The big thing, though, was that he lost 2 positions because of that spin, as both Shinosky and Bailey got around him. Now, actually, I believe got... Oh, it's Rishabh Kolsla, I believe, actually behind him. I thought that for a moment, I thought that was the 0-6 battling him for position, but it's not.
Less than 2 minutes. And I'm wondering if we're going to be getting another 2 laps or just 3 laps here for this race.
Right now, they're turning, at least the race leaders are, about 1 minute, 8 seconds. And right now, the 95 is currently... See where he is on track. I believe he's just now going through the carousel. My assumption is that he will probably make it back to the start-finish line somewhere right around maybe the 1 minute, 15 seconds left to go. So I'm assuming we're going to have probably 2 laps to go when he hits the line here. He's just now coming out of the final corner as we had an issue. I believe that was with the 0-6 of Jake Johansson coming through turn 1. 95 has hit the line now with 1 minute and 12 seconds left. So I think there's going to be at least 2 more laps.
2 more laps for the GT cars. And probably right now our leader for the GTs. 14 cars crossing the line now. So this should be their... They might be able to run 1 more lap. Nope, this is going to be their last. Or coming to their last lap.
I think more than likely... Let's see, 95 is currently through the carousel now. So, yeah, I think zeros will be on the clock for both the Daytona prototypes and the... this time around. Well, I don't know. 20 seconds left. 95 might make it back to the line before the zeros hit on the clock. We'll see here. 10 seconds left coming off the final corner.
If you want to, you can let off and make sure that he runs out of time.
Yeah, exactly. 5, 4, 3. I think that's exactly what he's doing. Zeros on the clock. Well, no, I think he crossed the line before the zeros were on the clock, so I think we got 1 more lap for them to go around. But to your point, I think the 14 is going to be coming around to take his white flag.
It's been dominance for this 14 car. Had a little bit of a hiccup at the start of the race, but once he got back to the lead, it's been all 14.
That early contact with Max Lufer, when the 2 of them were battling for the lead in the GT class. But as you said, since then, it really came down between him and Lufer. And then after Lufer had his issues in the carousel, the 14 has run away with it. He is on his final lap. There you see the 95 of Kyle Hayer. He crossed the line with about 3 seconds left on the clock, so he's coming around this time. He will be receiving the white flag for the Daytona prototypes. Well, maybe not. Maybe they said he did get the white flags. Looks like he's pulling it to the inside to take the checkers here. So maybe that was his white flag back then.
Dominance from the 95 car of Kyle Hayer, who took the lead and never looked back. He kept it up front, except for when he had to come in for the pits. Only didn't lead a couple of laps, but man, when he was just cruising all race long, running one of the fastest laps under 8 minutes late in the race. Congratulations to Kyle Hayer.
13 of Daniel Resch just now coming through the final corners to see his checkered flag. Is the guy that's actually second in the GT class. And it will be Daniel Resch that's going to cross the line, and he will win for the GT cars. And for both he and Hayer, as mentioned, dominating performance in both of the respective classes. Quite a number of cars doing some burnouts there in the turn 1 runoff. Kyle Hayer's coming around here. I think he's going to do his burnouts himself.
I think out there doing the donuts was Rishad Kozla, who should be doing some burnouts after surviving this race that was so difficult for him.
Says I've done enough spins in this race. How about I do a couple more down here?
Do a couple that were on purpose.
That's right. Kyle Hayer now going to burn it down in the turn 1 runoff. And he had perfect strategy. He was one of the first ones to hit pit road of the Daytona prototypes. So we thought maybe some of the guys might short pit to try and jump him, but instead he jumped the rest of the field. And you can just see the difference between one of the classes crossing the line and the other one. Daniel Resch has not even gotten over to the final corners to get to the front straightaway to get to his burnouts yet.
Overall, this was a pretty clean race. It was a fun sports race for us to commentate for sure. And just
Absolutely. Absolutely. Looks like the 14 won't be doing any burnouts. He's going to come right to pit road and head to victory lane. Still a solid outing for both of these guys. And to your point, yeah, a lot of the incidents that we had in this race, with a possible couple of exceptions, when we had that big hit there with Frankenfield heading into the final corner, when we had the hits there in the carousel with Bill Daly and the 688 of Max Lufer and whatnot, those hard hits, those were definitely some highlights there. But for the most part, a lot of the other incidents we had were solo car spins, and everybody did a pretty good job of avoiding them, allowing them to get their cars righted and continue on. I believe if we look here at the results, we're going to obviously, they're not quite going to be completely in order. So we're going to be showing you who of each class. So if you look here at the top 10, these guys all actually are in the Daytona, with Hayer winning. Strihart going to bring it home in second. Justin Johansson third. Matt Shinosky fourth. Joey Bailey there in fifth. Jared Campbell, despite his spin, and Jake Johansson, despite his spin in the closing stages, they still held on for sixth and seventh. Rolf Justin eighth. Chad Frankenfield still battled back for ninth out of the Daytona prototypes despite his early issues, and despite the 3 spins, Rishad Kozla still managed to finish 10th in the Daytona prototype class. If you look here, now you'll see that there's going to be some intermingles between different drivers of different classes. Daniel Resch, the winner of the GT class. Brent Jones actually was 11th place of the Daytona prototypes. Drew Eisenman was second of the GT class, and I believe the rest of these guys, at least most of them, are GT cars. With Eisenman second, Brian Zablensky was third, Personet in fourth, Stafford fifth, Hines was sixth, Looper in seventh, Bill Daly in eighth, and Tim Shinosky in the 91 was actually 12th place of the Daytona prototypes. Then you see the remainder of the finishing results here. You got Robert Kenny, or Shane Theron, actually. He was in the GT class. I believe he was 9th of the GT cars. Ethan Riesener was 10th. And then the rest of these drivers were of the Daytona prototype class. Tate Lytle, Colin Bowden, and David Tooker. If my calculations are correct, I believe they were, I think, 14th, 15th, and 16th of the Daytona prototype cars. I believe we have our race winner for the Daytona prototypes standing by. Let's see if we can get an interview here with Kyle Hayer. Kyle, it's Seth and Sam up here in the Flatout Racing Network booth. You got us?
I sure do, guys. What's going on?
A dominating performance by you, no doubt, but I think the biggest thing that we were noticing was the huge speed differentials between the Daytona prototypes and the GT cars, especially there in the final 10, maybe 15 minutes of that race. Just how zoned in were you on when you had to approach those cars and how carefully you had to make the passes on them?
I got to say, it doesn't really get any easier, but this class structure with the FR500 and the Riley DP, I kind of prefer this to the more modern C7 Corvette and the GTLM cars because the speed difference is so much bigger that you can be a little bit more patient knowing that you have the power to get by and the brakes to get by those slower Mustangs. But towards the end of the race, the gaps that you're approaching cars with was getting larger and larger, and you have to get braver and braver. I kind of scared myself over the curbs in the bus stop a couple times, but there was a couple awkward moments, but for the most part, it was not too bad tonight.
When you had that huge lead and we were starting to close in on the halfway point of the race, we were spinning all sorts of strategies for guys back in second, third, fourth, maybe trying to short pit and try and, maybe gain some time on you. And then you surprised us and come to pit road short pitting everybody else. I mean, what played into that strategy?
I think from the beginning, I was planning on coming down at halfway just to kind of maximize the tire life. And I figured that tires would probably be a good call. It turns out it didn't really help the pace at all. So I think taking tires was a bit of a mistake. And I'm not sure what the guys behind did, but I was a little bit surprised when they stayed out so long that they didn't take less fuel. I would have thought that the other Kyle would have beat me out, but I don't know what they did, but whatever they did didn't quite work out for them. So I didn't really adjust my strategy based on where I was. I was just going to pit it halfway, and that was what I was going to do.
Sam's got any questions for you here?
Yeah, I mean, your gap was so big and it didn't seem like the tire wear was changing anyone's lap times. Was there any point that you were just wondering, am I going to be able to hold this? Or were there any scary moments that you're like, oh gosh, can I get by this GT car?
I was a little bit concerned, I think after the pit stop, that I was going to kind of get caught up in a couple accidents. I know there was a few incidents in the carousel, and I was expecting a full course yellow for anything that was track blocking. And no one saw it, so I drove into a mess a couple times, and that was what scared me the most. Early on, I think Chad had some great pace, but I know he ran into some issues as well. So I wasn't super concerned about the pace tonight. This is a home track for me. I love this place, and this car, this is like a match made in heaven. But it was a little bit scary negotiating some of the traffic, especially with some of the incidents we saw towards the second half of that race.
Definitely, to win these types of races, you got to keep your nose clean. You got to remain consistent, and you did both of those and obviously completely dominated this race. We're going to give you the opportunity to turn the mic over and give you the opportunity to do some shout outs that you would like to maybe do.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to thank everybody on this Grid Life Riley DP crew. This is weird, by the way, going from the other side. I'm usually on your end of the microphone, but no, the Grid Life guys have been great to us and helping us out, bringing us out to their events, and we want to thank them for their support and being on the car tonight. And of course, Finian back at the Sim TV booth. He's running his TCR series tonight, so looking out for him. Hope he has a good run tonight.
A great performance for you here this evening. Congratulations on your victory, and go celebrate.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Thanks for everything you do.
And now we've got our GT class winner, Daniel Resch, on standby, so let's bring him in. Daniel, it's Seth and Sam up here in the Flatout Racing Network booth. You got us?
I sure do.
All right, well, Let's go back to the very beginning of this race where you and the 688 were battling for the lead, and the two of you made some contact there and spun out. I mean, at that point, what was the strategy to be able to battle your way back up into the lead for your respective class?
Well, going in, I was just looking at driving smooth, easy laps. I wasn't looking at racing hard because I knew it was going to be a long race, and there's a lot of crashes in practice. And so I was expecting if he was going to make a move on any of the corners, I probably would have let him go. But when he went into the bus stop, I kind of got a little frustrated because I thought, man, of all the corners on the track, you got to pick the hardest one to recover from. You know, going too wide through there is harder than any other corner. And so I was a little too aggressive there because I was just frustrated in the heat of the moment. And I don't think I left enough room, so that caused us to tangle. It looks like, I don't know if he got a slowdown penalty, but I'm guessing that he was just nice and let us catch back up. But at that time, I wasn't really too concerned about still getting on the podium because I knew it was a really long race and that I'd have a lot of time, a lot of laps to be able to make up time.
If we look at the two different classes, there were two different strategies as far as the race leaders were concerned. For the Daytona prototypes, we had the race leader short pit the rest of his competition, but you did the exact opposite. You stayed out 54 laps before coming to pit road. I mean, we were shocked that a car could even go that far, but what was the mentality behind that strategy?
Well, going into the race, I was planning on pitting at the halfway point. But once I started racing, I was thinking of two things. One, I was thinking, well, I haven't driven this car on this tire model in a while, this distance before. So I was kind of curious to see what I could do. I knew that the tires would lose grip, but the fuel load would also get lighter. So I figured, well, maybe I might be able to hang in with the lap times there. And the second thing I was thinking was, I want to avoid as much traffic as possible. And so the longer I stay out, the more likely I'm not going to be tangled up with a bunch of other Mustangs.
Daniel, I mean, that was a very long race. Was there any point during the race where you were just like, oh, that's scary out there being tangled up with some of the GT and prototype cars?
No, thankfully, I got pretty lucky because I heard several times on the radio, some of the DP guys, I think, were talking about some of the crashes that were on track, and they would come around a blind corner and there'd be a car in the middle of the road. The Mustangs have it a little bit easier because we're so slow that even there's not really any blind corners because it takes a while before we get through any given corner. But I got pretty lucky in that I never really had a stopped car on track in front of me. So I was fortunate to not have to really do too much avoidance.
Obviously, you know, that strategy that you had of staying out that long kept you in pretty clean racetrack, and obviously definitely helped you in having a huge gap to be able to win this race for the GT class. We're going to give you the opportunity to turn the mic over to you to be able to do some shout outs.
Boy. I guess my main shout out would be Pete Ness, who made the iSpeed software program. I think that's really great. I still use it every single time I'm in the car. I don't think enough people admire the value that it brings. It makes it really easy to see the delta speed and delta time and different configurations comparing against your lap. That's a big help.
All right, well, a dominating performance for you here today. Go and enjoy your win.
Thanks, guys.
All right, so that is going to do it here from the Glen. And Sam, I told you coming in, Sam, you know, I know absolutely nothing about these types of cars. I know nothing about this style of racing, but I think it's growing on me. That was pretty entertaining.
Oh, endurance racing is so much fun. You never know what you're going to see. You got so much faster cars going to get slower cars. You never know when you're going to have to pass a car and where accidents are going to happen. Action everywhere. And I just love endurance races.
Absolutely. So that is going to do it for our coverage here this evening. Hope that everybody enjoyed what they saw. A great race from start to finish. So we will be seeing you guys next time. For Sam, I'm Seth Cole. We had Matthew Rodriguez on the controls. He needs a shout out too because he did a great job with our cameras and everything here this evening. But until next time, you've been watching another broadcast on the Flatout Racing Network. We'll help you guys have a good night.